Thank you.
And let everybody in. Welcome, everybody. Hey, Louise. All right, we're going to give it just a few minutes while other people join, and then we will get started in just a bit, okay? I think we've got pretty much everyone that registered, just a few people that haven't shown up, but for the interest of time, we'll go ahead and get started. I would love it if you guys, at least for the opening piece, if you can't show your camera, that's fine, but if you can, just so we can say hello and see all of you guys, that would be fantastic. So we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you guys so much for coming. I'm going to let Holly kind of do some opening remarks and welcome, and then we'll dive right in.
All right. Thank you, Lynn. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. I'm going to keep this very brief before I turn it over to Christine to do her presentation. We are doing something for strategic planning similar to what we did for our grants consulting process, which is we have contracted with Christine at Wheels on the Bus Consulting. She is going to do this webinar this morning to introduce everyone to kind of some basic strategic planning information. She's got some really great tools that she's going to share with you. And then each affiliate will be eligible to do a follow-up one-on-one consultation with Christine at no cost to your affiliate. NAMI North Carolina will automatically pick up the cost for doing that. And you will just schedule that directly with Christine. You don't need to go through me or Lynn to do that. And who attends that 1 hour consultation is up to you as the affiliate. So it could be several board members, just whoever within your affiliate that you feel like would benefit from that one-on-one. If after that you would like, as an affiliate, to engage some level of consulting services around strategic planning, affiliate growth, anything like that with Christine, you can enter into that agreement, and then you can request a mini grant from NAMI North Carolina to cover the cost of doing that. So this is a service that we're making available to the affiliates. We don't want it to cost anything to the affiliates. And we know that depending on kind of what stage your affiliate is at in some type of a planning process, you may need more or less of a strategic plan. And so again, that's why this is really customizable. So again, we're very excited to welcome Christine. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to her, let her get started. And thanks again for joining us.
Thank you, Holly. I am excited to be on here with you all today. I am going to share some slides, so just give me a second, please.
Christine, while you're doing that, just very quickly, I want you guys to know Holly and I will be monitoring the chat. So if you do have anything that you want to add there, we will be monitoring that.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. That's the hard thing with sharing Google Slides on Zoom is I kind of have to choose one thing or the other to look at. So, okay, so can y'all see these slides?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Okay, so good morning. So like Holly and Lynn said, my name is Christine Gendron, and I provide consulting services for nonprofits through my small business, Wheels on the Bus. I'm really excited to be here with you guys today. You can think of this as like a strategic planning one-on-one or 101 kind of training. This will be interactive, and so I know some of you don't have your cameras on yet. It would be ideal if at some point you can put those cameras on and plan to participate. We're going to be doing some work in breakout groups. What we'll probably do is instead of putting you in pairs, I'll put kind of half of you in one group and half of you in the other, just to make sure that nobody gets stuck out there kind of by themselves. But this will definitely be more interesting and more impactful if you're able to participate fully. So I encourage you to do that if you can. Let's see. So a little bit about me and about Wheels on the Bus. So I have spent my career working in essentially in social services and youth services and child welfare, youth homelessness, or recently public education. And so I have a lot of experience working with organizations and issues that are very relevant to mental health and to the work that you guys do. I've got some experience with NAMI. I've got quite a bit of experience with advocacy. A lot of what gets me excited is kind of that intersection between like nonprofits and public policy and politics. And so I really like working with organizations that do advocacy as well as with organizations that are impacted by what's happening at the public policy level and with the political climate. I spent 8 years running our state youth services association here in Texas. I'm based in Austin. I have also worked for a very large child welfare organization, helping them expand into Texas, and for an association in the public education sector. I have had my own business for about 4 years now and have done consulting for a lot of different nonprofits. My organization or my business is called Wheels on the Bus because the name was inspired by my niece, Annie, who you'll see pictured here, who loved buses when she was in preschool. And I thought that the idea of Wheels on the Bus made sense because with nonprofits, it's like you guys are really the drivers for your own organization, but there are services and supports that can be helpful to you. My vision for starting this business was after my experience as the executive director of like a small grassroots organization, realizing that I needed access to consultants who had like versatile skills and could be helpful to me with a variety of things, but who also were like flexible and affordable and willing to like roll up their sleeves and do work rather than just give advice. So these are the services that my business offers. Kind of break it down with like the bus theme. So navigation would be like your strategic planning. Fuel, that's, you know, your donor dollars, as well as like communications and like the general support and the stakeholder engagement that you often need to be effective in advocacy. And then maintenance, that's more of like program evaluation. I've helped a number of organizations when they were in crisis. So for example, when like a bunch of people left and they needed somebody to step in and just try to help keep things up in the air, and then also figure out like what's wrong, like why did everybody leave and how can we fix it. So before we dive into our topic of strategic planning, I want to do a little icebreaker. And this is an activity called impromptu networking. We're going to use a few different activities throughout this training because one, I think they'll be helpful for our goal for this training, which is helping you, giving you some context for strategic planning, but also because these are activities that might be useful for you to use in your own meetings or when you're having strategic planning or other discussions with your board, with your staff. So this is called impromptu networking. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put you guys in small breakout groups. And when you're in your breakout groups, I want you to answer a couple of questions. The first is, what motivates you to keep going or working, doing this work when times are tough? We know that this is an especially difficult time for nonprofits right now, especially those that rely on government funding. There's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of stress. And so this first question is really about what motivates you to keep doing what you do. And then the second is a set of questions about strategic planning. So what is stressful for you about strategic planning, and what is exciting about it? So normally we do this in pairs, but because I don't want anybody to get stuck without a pair who's there and able to participate, I'm going to just put you in 2 different breakout groups so you can take turns answering these questions. Or actually, I'll put you in three breakout groups. If anybody ends up in a group where there's not anybody for you to talk to, just come back to the main room and then I'll put you in a different group.
You didn't assign me to one, right, Christine?
I thought I did. Maybe it didn't put you on the list because you're a co-host.
That might be it.
I don't see how I can even assign you. Do you see the list of breakout rooms on your screen?
Yeah, the list popped up, so I can go join one. I'll join room 3.
Okay, sounds good. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Hey, Lynn.
Hey, guys. Sorry, I got lost in the room transition.
Oh, okay. Are you part of the group or are you a monitor?
I am part of the group.
Oh, okay.
Oh, while we're here, we do have to follow up for the NF agenda. So we'll do that another time, but it's time to get that on course
Yeah,
again.
that's on my list. I was going to get out an email with a reminder and also the Zoom link so that everybody gets it.
Thank you.
So, okay. So does anybody want to go first?
I started by saying when times get tough, that's when I know that my little contribution will actually have a bigger value. And so I keep plugging away.
Yeah.
I guess, like Louise said, what keeps me going is remembering when, I was new to Chapel Hill and my daughter had an episode and was hospitalized, and I really didn't know anyone here. And through a therapist, I got the name of Joanna Bowman, who was then president of NAMI. And she was like a lifeline. She really helped me navigate working with the hospital, knowing what questions to answer. And so I always felt that what keeps me going is knowing that there are other parents out there who I know how they feel at that moment. And so if I and our group can be of support and hope, that keeps me going.
Absolutely. I think for me, it's very similar to both of you. Obviously it's what I do 40 hours a week. I work for NAMI, but besides that, it's more, an example is I just had dinner last night with a friend whose younger sister is having a mental health episode right now, and she's really struggling in what her role is to support her. And so I was able to talk about NAMI and how, there are supports out there that you wouldn't necessarily think of, because I think some people just think about their friends and family, but there's other, ways to get support. And so that kind of reminded me last night why I do what I do, and, to be able to share resources and share what NAMI does with people, because mental illness affects everyone in some way. It really does.
I work a lot with our CIT, and I discovered that the first responders in the class had no idea that there was a series of different levels of care and so forth that people could have, starting with the emergency room, then the psychiatric unit, then an ACT team, you know, work as you. They had no idea about that, and the general public doesn't either.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
sort
And they
of
don't know
know
to ask for it. They don't know to even ask the questions about it. Like about is my child or relative or friend eligible to have an ACP? Because
Mhm.
if you don't ask, sometimes they don't volunteer it at the hospital anyway.
What's a case manager? I mean, I've had so many people ask me that. What are they supposed
Mm.
to do? Um, so that kind of really basic information makes me feel good. I can share it with people.
Yeah. And that's why like our programs are so helpful. Like, the family to family and peer to peer are just so, comprehensive for all that information that people just do not know is out there. Instead of trying to find it in bits and pieces and, spending a lot of time trying to figure out how to help your loved ones, like it's like, here you go. Here's a
Yeah,
course that will teach you all of that.
you can keep and flip through. And
Yeah. And it's
okay,
free.
so what is making us excited about strategic planning? Was that the other
I
question?
think so.
Oh, we got 30 more seconds.
Yeah, I was going to say we're limited, and you
Well,
guys
I
talk about
do.
strategic
I,
planning.
I do like strategic planning. I mean, I think we know we need it. We have some documents that relate to it. Uh, but then we get busy with other stuff and like we don't ever really get the plan all done. So we just
Yeah.
got to get it done.
And
What
I
about you?
know the concept of it, but I have no clue how to create one or what to do with it after we've created it. And so I need that. Y'all, I'm sorry. I got to answer this phone call.
All right.
That's
So should
okay.
we leave them? Oh, we're good.
I was going to say we should
Break up.
just get kicked out. It'll take us back.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I think the implementation of a strategic plan is where the hard part is. Like, I think getting one together is difficult, but it can be done. It's the implementation that is challenging for sure. So hopefully this is
I mean,
helpful.
we have broad objectives. Like we know we're going to be doing certain courses, or we know that we're going to be doing, you know, certain public events, CIT.
He's back. So welcome back. Let's take a minute just to debrief. So I would love to hear about what y'all heard from other people in your rooms about what is stressful about strategic planning. Does anybody want to jump in and share, or you can type into the chat?
I will. We talked about how we knew we had the concept of strategic planning, but somehow doing the practical things about putting on your programming and so forth, we just sort of never got around to it. And I have no clue how you develop a strategic plan. Never did it, was never aware of one. I'm sorry, y'all.
Okay, thanks for that feedback. So it sounds like it's both an issue of kind of time and competing priorities, as well as understanding exactly like what to do and how to do it. Does anybody else want to jump in?
Maybe Holly can step in for our group.
So it was interesting. One of the things that Tom said in our group that I really liked is what can be stressful about strategic planning is where you are as an organization when you're doing it. So if you're having to do it because things are falling apart, as opposed to you're doing it because you're kind of forward looking, that adds to the stress, and it can have an impact on how you do the planning, right? Does that capture it, Tom?
It does. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. That's a good point. And that might even be connected to why are you doing strategic planning, right? Is it suddenly like, oh my gosh, there's a crisis, we have to do this? Or is it more about kind of excitement around where are we going? So what about what's exciting about strategic planning? What did y'all hear in your groups?
Is something new, and it's always neat to learn something new
Awesome. Thank you.
for us.
That's one of the fun things about running a small organization, right? Is we get to do everything, and so we're constantly learning new things. Anybody else?
I don't know that we actually hit on that one, but the creativity of it when it's done in a good atmosphere and you're in a good place and so forth is a lot of fun.
Okay, awesome. Agreed. Okay. So that I think is a good segue. I'm going to go back to these slides. Can everybody still see the slides? Okay, so this is just kind of a word cloud with some of the topics that I think about, at least when it comes to strategic planning. But this is one reason I think that it can be overwhelming for people, right? Because there are all of these different things to think about, like your mission, your vision, your approach, your strategies, your goals, your objectives, your metrics, so many pieces. And then there's also like your process, like how do you do it, right? Like how do you engage people in developing it? Do you do facilitation? How do you make sure that implementation works? Do you do an evaluation? Do you use a dashboard? And so there are just kind of all of these different like ways of thinking about strategic plans and different things to consider. There are different kinds of strategic plans. Y'all kind of touched on that, right? So an organization might need like a more foundational strategic plan if it is new, or if it's not new, but it's been through a lot of change, or it's just realizing that maybe it doesn't have some of that like infrastructure and like basic stuff in place that's needed to grow or to meet goals. It might be a plan that is more what we would call like transformational. That's more like, okay, we know we already have this foundational stuff in place and we're ready to like to really grow or to like transform the way that we work or transform the space in which we work. And so there's so many different ways to think about strategic planning, and that can make it overwhelming, but also exciting. Is there anything that you guys would add here, like words or topics that you commonly associate with strategic planning? Guidelines. Okay, awesome. Thank you. Yep. Anything else? Okay.
What do you call those sheets you put on the wall and write, your goals and all that kind of stuff? That has nothing to do with it, except that reminds me of strategic planning.
Like those big sticky sheets?
Yeah, and you're supposed to say, okay, here's the number one thing we want to do. Everybody puts it up there and then we have to decide.
Absolutely. They're like big Post-its.
Yeah.
Yeah. If we were meeting in person, we might do some of that today, but we'll do the Zoom version instead. Absolutely, I definitely think of that with strategic planning as well. Okay, so basically, big picture, we can boil it down to strategic planning simply means creating a map, a roadmap for your organization. So identifying where is it that you're trying to go, how are you going to get there, and that includes looking at like what are the barriers that you have to overcome in order to get there. And so when you think of it as a map, to me, that really kind of opens the door to like there are a lot of different ways to do a strategic plan. They can come in varying shapes and sizes. They can have varying levels of detail. A lot of it kind of just depends on what you think is the right fit for your organization at the time. But the big picture is mapping out where are you going. So that's your vision and perhaps your goals. And then how are you going to get there? And so that's where you get into those more like measurable objectives, strategies, tactics. Tactics would have been a good word to put on the word cloud. Those types of things. And just because you're making a strategic plan, you don't necessarily need goals and objectives and strategies and tactics and pillars, right? You need something that articulates where are you going to go, what are you going to do, and then what are some measurable ways for you to like assess whether you are moving in the right direction. Because strategic plans are often over a multi-year period, or even if it's 1 year, that can be a lot of time, right? And so you don't want to just wait until the end of that period to see if you got to where you were trying to go, but you want to have like milestones or metrics to show you if you're really moving in the right direction. And so some organizations will have goals, objectives, strategies, tactics, all of that. They might even have pillars under which they kind of organize those different things. That is a lot. It's not necessarily appropriate for every organization. It can be much more simple than that. Any thoughts on this? Is there anything that y'all want to add based on your experience?
In thinking about strategic planning, it just seems to me that SMART goals would be really important.
Absolutely, yes. SMART goals or SMART objectives, something that is SMART, specific, measurable, action-oriented. I don't even remember the R. Do you remember the R? That'll be on here later.
Yeah, realistic, I think.
Okay, realistic or relevant, yes, and then time bound. Yes, absolutely. And so you can have SMART goals, or I often see organizations where the goals are not SMART, but they've got like SMART objectives under those goals. And so the goals might be a little more like big picture visionary, but you definitely need something that has those qualities of a SMART goal so that you can measure that you can assess whether you're making progress and whether you get there ultimately, right? Because if your goal is big, like not big, but if it's big, like if your goal is like we want to be an outstanding advocate for families with mental health needs, well, that there's no real way to figure out if you achieve that, right? And so if you make it SMART and you say, you know, we want to achieve 3 wins in our state legislature by X date, it's more clear whether or not you meet the latter goal than the former goal. Okay, so an activity for fun. So this is an activity called Triz. This kind of turns things upside down a little bit, but it's, so what if you wanted to do strategic planning all wrong? And so we're going to think kind of, instead of thinking about what we should be doing, let's think about kind of if the situation was different and if we wanted to really mess this up in a big way, what would that mean? So I want you to brainstorm for a second about what would be like the most unwanted possible results when it comes to strategic planning for your organization. And I'll give you an example. So not having a strategic plan ever, that would be a pretty bad unwanted result. Or another example might be you have a strategic plan and it is completely irrelevant to the work that you do. It's talking about something wildly different. Do y'all have any other ideas about what kind of a wildly unwanted result might look like?
I guess having a plan and then never looking at it again.
Yep, awesome. So making a plan and then like not really using it.
And having a that has unrealistic goals in it, like developing enough housing for the mentally ill in our area within 5 years or something like that.
That's a good one. Yeah. Something that you can't possibly achieve.
Yeah.
That would be an unwanted result because you're setting yourself up for failure. So maybe also one of the unwanted results is just kind of failing to even get close to any of meeting any of your goals or like learning anything valuable. Anything else?
I would say lack of boundaries.
Okay.
They're scattered.
Okay. So let's brainstorm a bit about what you would need to do to achieve some of these unwanted results. And I think lack of boundaries is a good example. So if you are making a strategic plan and you have no boundaries in terms of like what's appropriate for your organization to do, then you can end up with something that's really scattered, that's not really relevant to your mission. What are the other things you could do, like if you wanted to sabotage strategic planning and get one of these really bad results?
Set too many goals.
That's a good one. And it's really hard not to do because sometimes we're just so excited about our organization and our work. There are like so many things we want to do, but you're absolutely right. That can sabotage our success. What else?
Not communicating it to the rest of your organization.
Yep. You can't implement it by yourself, right? Your whole team has to be on the same page about where you're going and how you're going to get there. And so that requires communication. What else?
I think it also involves your team coming together to put them in place, that you do have them at the table for setting up the strategic plan. Without them, you can't, it's not a one-person show.
Yeah. So if you really wanted to sabotage this, maybe you would exclude them from your planning. You would just make it without, like, you would exclude important people, make it without them. Important stakeholders. What else could you do if you really wanted to sabotage the strategic planning process? You really wanted to make sure that you got a bad result. Any other ideas?
Be too narrow, too myopic.
Okay, good one. Yep. Okay, so now I want to invite you guys to spend a couple minutes, and actually, I'm gonna put you in breakout groups again. There'll be different groups this time, I think. But I want you to just talk among yourselves about, is there anything kind of on this list that your organizations may be doing and may have done in the past? Like, is there anything that you're doing or that you have done that you may need to stop doing or to change in order to make sure that your strategic planning is successful? So I'm going to move you back into breakout rooms. It'll take me just a second. Um, let's see. Okay, if you end up in a room, I believe everybody will be in a room with somebody who's on the call participating, but if you end up in a room on your own, just come back to the main room and I'll move you.
Hey, Lynn.
Hello.
Hey, Lynn, remind us what we're supposed to be talking about.
Well, I was hoping y'all got it because I would.
Oh, no.
Let me.
It's supposed to be what can go wrong with strategic planning when things go wrong? What happens? Right?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I caught the tail end of it. I was finishing up an email and I was hoping she would repeat it. But
Yeah,
yeah,
ask her to put that in the chat from now on.
yeah. Let me.
Remind us. Yeah, good idea.
I'm actually gonna. Oh, it's
Um,
because I'm in a
so
breakout room.
what
I can't chat.
so what can go wrong? I mean, to me, it's just not following it or having goals and then picking things that weren't even on there. Or, like you have a goal and then somebody has an idea, a bright idea that's not, and says, oh, why don't we go there? And then, we're off the chart of the strategic plan. So
Or you miss a good opportunity to do something cool or helpful because it's not part of your strategic plan. It doesn't contribute to the strategic plan. Well, we can't do that now. We're focusing on housing or, whatever. Can you tell I've had phone calls from people about housing?
big issue.
I just cringe every time I get one.
Yeah.
Well, that's the other thing. You have to be fluid in a way. I mean, what could go wrong is that you get so rigid that
Mhm.
you don't
Yeah.
feel like you can respond to, as Louise said, housing crisis or, there's crises that come up, flood, a hurricane is things we don't control and we've got to be flexible. So I guess that would be when it goes wrong is it's so rigid that
Yeah.
we creates conflict and like, well, that's not on the plan.
So we
Yeah.
can't do that
I
until
think making.
our
Yeah.
strategic.
Yeah, I think making the goals and the strategic plan too detailed. I think
Mhm.
making sure that they're more broad spectrum, not too broad spectrum, but broad spectrum enough that they can encompass potentially anything that falls under an umbrella that you can, you know, take care of. Because yeah, if you get too detailed and you get too like, then you're pigeonholing yourself into a certain area. And just being inflexible, I think, can cause it to go wrong. Like
Mhm.
nonprofits, as y'all know, everyone wears a lot of hats. You have to be ready to pivot at any time.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
pivot.
Yeah, I like creating a strategic plan.
Okay, it looks like everybody's back. So are there any volunteers who are willing to share a little bit about what y'all discussed? Things that your organization or that you heard another organization is doing or has done in the past that need to be stopped to get a good strategic planning outcome?
Well, we talked about, when you do have a strategic plan, that it has to be flexible or breathable enough that when something comes up, like a crisis or something that wasn't anticipated at the time, that you can easily pivot. So let's say, a hurricane comes up, and there needs to be a shift, or there's a housing crisis or some other crisis, uh, it needs to be flexible enough that it can respond to a current event that
It's a really
needs.
good point. I mean, the landscape in which we work is constantly changing, right? And the people you serve have needs that change, and the climate in which you work changes. So it's a really good one. What else? What came up that you heard that maybe organizations are doing or have done that hasn't worked very well? Anything? Maybe everybody's organization has just been doing an amazing job and there isn't anything that needs to be stopped.
We didn't actually talk about this. Kathy and I got a little, admittedly, I got her a little off track on something else
Okay.
related to strategic planning. But where you bring someone in, but you don't like an outside person to help you do strategic planning, but you don't give them a grounding in the work that you actually do. And so you end up with this kind of generic strategic plan that really doesn't fit the resources and support you have within your organization. It might work for a much larger organization, or it might work for small, whatever it is, but you didn't really equip that person coming in to help lead your strategic planning process with the tools they needed to help you be successful.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, because so I've seen these done kind of in a few different ways in terms of how the facilitator is used. And so I've been in situations where the facilitator facilitates a meeting or a series of meetings, and the board or whoever is in the meeting makes the plan then and there. The facilitator is just a facilitator. And that can help ensure that plan is based in like a real grounding of the work, right? Because the people who do the work are making the decisions. But what you run into then is, well, maybe the majority of the people in the room aren't going to come to consensus immediately on kind of the best possible course of action in the plan, right? And so, especially if we think about board members, sometimes our board doesn't really understand our work as well as we do. But then on the other hand, I've seen it where the consultant is basically, they talk to people, they gather some information, and then they go write the plan. And that can work really well if they really understand what you do and the context in which you do it, and they've really talked with you extensively, and they're able to put together something that is like really strategic and on point. But then the downside with that is like what you said, Holly, where if they don't really truly understand the nuances of your work and all of those external factors affecting your work, then you might end up with something that's either generic or that's like kind of off base. And so, yeah, I think it can be really important to strike that balance, and also to find the right facilitator or consultant to help. Is there anything else that came up? Okay. So these are some best practices for creating a strategic plan. You guys have already addressed some of these. But the first one here is conducting analysis. So this might be a landscape scan. This might be an analysis of your programs or your financial position, how things are going for your organization internally, or what's going on externally that may impact your work. But this is just about gathering the data, analyzing the data, so that when you create your strategic plan, you're not creating it in a vacuum, right? But you're creating a plan that addresses the most pressing issues and considers the most important factors. The second one is engage stakeholders. So this might be your staff, this might be your board of directors, this might be the clients that you serve. It might be just other stakeholders in this space. So for example, those who work in like the systems that serve the people that you serve. There are different ways to engage stakeholders in strategic planning. You can interview them casually. You can facilitate focus groups. You can send out surveys. You can invite them to like a facilitated meeting where they're part of the development of the plan. Personally, I don't think there's necessarily like a specific right or wrong way to do it, but it's about thinking about who are your stakeholders, who have insight, at what level should they be involved, and then what's the most practical way to get them. So you might have certain stakeholders like other organizations that serve the people you serve. And it might be good to talk to them, just a casual conversation to kind of get their perspective on your organization's strengths, weaknesses, or challenge areas, and like kind of opportunities and gaps in the field. But you don't necessarily need to like invite them to all your strategic planning meetings, right? Whereas like your staff and your board probably want to have a bigger role than just being part of a interview up front, something like that. The third bullet on here is use tools. So there are a lot of tools available for conducting analysis. There are a lot of tools available for engaging stakeholders and other people. There are tools available for developing and implementing strategic plans. There are all kinds of tools out there. The tools that will work best for you might depend on your organization's situation. I'm going to walk through 2 tools with you in a little bit on today's call, but there are so many more out there. And so if it's of interest to you, that's something that we could use your kind of one-on-one follow-up call for, is to figure out, well, what tools might be valuable for you. And a lot of these tools are free. So these are not necessarily like expensive things that you need to buy or anything that you need to pay for at all. Setting a clear mission and vision. So if we go back to that roadmap concept, this is the like, where are you going? Going back to what somebody said about boundaries for your organization, there are all kinds of cool things that our organizations could theoretically be doing for people and for our communities, but we want to stick to what is kind of captured within the scope of our mission and our vision. Aligning with umbrella organizations. So, you know, obviously you guys are part of NAMI North Carolina, and then there's also the National NAMI organization. So in an ideal world, you are going in the same direction that these other organizations are going. And so your strategic plan doesn't need to look exactly like theirs. It probably shouldn't, because your organization's different and you have different challenges that you're addressing and different opportunities that you're pursuing. But you want to be going in the same general direction. If you're not going in the same general direction, then it's probably a good time to have a conversation. Setting SMART goals. So somebody brought this up earlier. So I wrote down the acronym for SMART. SMART, I've seen it defined by different people in different ways, but generally, I think the most consensus is that the S stands for specific. So being kind of specific and clear about what is it you're trying to do. The M is for measurable. And so that's where we quantify it. We put in some numbers so that later we can assess, like, did we actually get here? The A is achievable. Somebody brought that up earlier. You don't want goals that are just not realistic, given, you know, what they would require or the world around you, because then you're not setting yourself up for success. R is relevant. So that goes back to having boundaries. And then T is time bound. So basically you want to give yourself a deadline, right? So that then you can, it puts kind of some urgency behind, like, okay, we have to get this done by X date. And it's also a way for you to assess, okay, did we get it done? And if not, why not? Assigning responsibilities. So in some organizations, all of the responsibilities and the strategic plan fall on one person, the executive director. That is sometimes the reality for very small organizations. Hopefully, it won't be the situation for you. Hopefully, if you don't have staff, you at least have some board members or somebody else that you can assign some responsibilities to. If they will all fall on you, then that might be a reason to have kind of a smaller strategic plan, to not have like 10 different goals, but maybe just a few. Track progress and assess performance. So this goes to the idea of implementation. You know, there should be another bullet on here for communication, which one of you guys mentioned earlier, but communicating your plan out to everybody on your team. Tracking progress and assessing performance. A lot of organizations use dashboards to do this. And so that's where having SMART goals is especially helpful, because if you have a SMART goal, it says like exactly what you need to do by when. That helps you create a dashboard, because you can put it into a dashboard format and say, okay, we're supposed to have XYZ done a month from now. Are we on track to do that? And then make adjustments as needed. I think somebody touched on this also, but things are always changing, right? You might have a goal related to expanding a particular program, and then something happens and it's a lot harder to raise money. Maybe funders aren't giving as much, like maybe it's an economic issue, or maybe government funding is not available in the way that it once was. And in a situation like that, maybe goals that are focused on growth are no longer the most realistic or practical goals. And so it's okay to go back and make an adjustment. Similarly, you might be focused on a really specific program, and then there's an emergency or a disaster or something happens, and you realize, oh my gosh, our patients or our clients have a different priority right now. And so we need to adjust so that we're still providing what they need. Are there any thoughts on these best practices, or is there anything that y'all want to add? Okay, so let's go into the discussion about the first tool, which is the SWOT analysis. Many of y'all have probably done one of these before. A SWOT analysis is a tool for understanding your organization as well as the landscape in which you work. And so you'll see a diagram here. It's called SWOT because the SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And so you can think of these as each being like a quadrant, okay, with strengths on the upper left, then weaknesses on the upper right, and opportunities and threats below. And the positioning of these quadrants is important because of these labels that you see in gray along the side. So this blue-green column with strengths and opportunities, these are kind of like the things that are helpful to your mission. And then the column on the right of that, the red and the orange, these are the things that have the potential to be harmful to you advancing your mission. Similarly, if we go all the way over on the left and we see these words internal and external, so internal refers to this blue and red row. So strengths and weaknesses are internal to your organization. So you might have some programs that are just going really well, and those are strengths. You might have some amazing people on your team, and those are strengths. Weaknesses, you might be lacking some key infrastructure, and those would be a weakness, but they're all internal to your organization. So on the other hand, if we go below where it says opportunities and threats, those are external to your organization. So those are things that you don't necessarily have control over, but that impact your organization and the work you do. And so they're important to be aware of so that they can be considered. So opportunities might be maybe there is a new funder in your area who is really interested in mental health. A threat might be kind of our political climate right now and the possibility of funding drying up due to this focus on like government efficiency, right? And so these are things that you cannot control, but that you can consider. And that matter, because if there are opportunities, you can make plans on how to kind of capitalize on them, maximize them, invest based on them. If they're threats, you can make plans for how to mitigate them and how to protect yourself, kind of despite them. Protect yourself being your organization. So, how many of you guys have experience with doing SWOT analysis for your organization? Okay, some of you, not all of you. So NAMI North Carolina recently did a SWOT analysis. And so Holly, are you available to talk for a few minutes about how you guys did it and what you came up with?
Sure. So we did do a SWOT analysis as part of our preparation for our upcoming board retreat to work on our strategic plan. It involved surveying all of our board members and all of our staff, and we had 100% completion rate, which we were very excited about. And then we had someone external to the organization who basically took all of the data and put it into a SWOT analysis for us, but also then looked at, based on that SWOT analysis and also looking at NAMI National's new strategic plan, where we were aligned with NAMI National, and then which was the vast majority of what we were looking at. And then, a few little outlying areas. And so all of that information has been shared with the board and with the staff. And then what we'll be doing at our board retreat is taking that information and basically moving it to the next stage, which is the actionable items. So based on all the information that we have, what does the next 3 years look like in terms of, we know the mission and vision of NAMI North Carolina, but is that still, do we need to do any revisioning? And then how do we actually get to where we want to go? How do we put that roadmap together? And that will be utilizing those SMART goals and objectives.
Awesome. Can you give us some examples of strengths or weaknesses that y'all identified?
Yes, I had to think about it. Interestingly enough, one of the strengths and one of the weaknesses is that we receive the amount of funding that we receive from DHHS. So it's allowed us to do a lot of growth and a lot of programming, but it is also a weakness in that DHHS funds comprise 75% of our annual budget. And so being that reliant on one funding source is never ideal. Some of the other, one of the strengths that was identified was the fact that we have a professional staff. One of the weaknesses was basically our, if you will, kind of our, that we need to update our committee structure, which is something that we're working on. If you looked at, there's so many opportunities in North Carolina in the mental health field. And so, those opportunities include, forging new partnerships, opportunities to grow more affiliates. And, Lynn is actively working on, communities that want to have NAMI affiliates that don't currently have them.
Awesome, thank you. So because strengths and weaknesses are internal, the strengths and weaknesses for NAMI North Carolina may or may not kind of align with the strengths and weaknesses of the affiliates, right? Because they have the potential to be unique to each organization, but obviously nonprofits often have similarities, right? Where like it's pretty common for a nonprofit to have kind of lack of diversification of funding as a weakness, for example. When we get down to external, to opportunities and threats, I imagine that all of you on this call will have your organizations will have some shared opportunities and some shared threats, right? Because this is the external stuff that's more about the landscape, and you're all focused on serving, kind of the similar populations or the same population within one state, right? Within a specific climate. And so, what I want to do is do some brainstorming around what are the opportunities and threats that are relevant to y'all's work right now. And Holly, I'm wondering if you can kick that off since you guys have done this analysis already, and the opportunities and threats that you identified are probably pretty relevant to everybody else in the call. And I know you gave some examples of opportunities. You said opportunities for new partnerships to grow more affiliates. But can you talk a little about kind of what else you see, like based on the climate, as opportunities or threats?
I actually pulled up our SWOT. So our opportunities were to expand our geographic coverage and services, build new partnerships, and we did identify corporate partnerships as an area that has a lot of opportunities for us. Expand our youth and school engagement, increase our diverse community outreach, to really develop the new CIT law enforcement program. CIT is not new, obviously, but us having a CIT director on staff is new, and so that's an opportunity. And then to continue to enhance our social media presence. The threats that we identified, the political uncertainty and the funding impacts that might come from that, staff and volunteer burnout, competition from other organizations, aging leadership and succession issues, and then potentially changes in our relationship with DHHS. I think part of that was around, what you have a new governor coming in. What are they going to do in terms of the Secretary of DHHS, which that role did change. We had a very close and positive relationship with Secretary Kinsley. We do not currently have that type of a relationship with the new Secretary of DHHS. We're working on it, but that's definitely, an area that is going to require a lot of effort on our part this year.
Okay, thank you. So I want to go back to those opportunities you mentioned, because there are some that you touched on that might be really relevant to this group. So, for example, you mentioned school engagement and CIT law enforcement. So, kind of what I would describe as the opportunity are a few things. One is that we know that nationally our schools are in crisis for many reasons, right? One of the challenges that they're dealing with that they say is a big challenge is they are having a really difficult time managing student mental health, that they have an increasing number of students who are experiencing some really significant mental health issues, and they're not equipped due to funding or for whatever reason to meet those needs. And so that's potentially an opportunity, right? Because it increases the dialogue kind of on the issues on which you guys work. And then related to that, when you said CIT law enforcement, I'm thinking school safety. So while political uncertainty is a threat, and kind of this focus on just like kind of cleaning out our government programs is a threat, there is a real opportunity when we think about school safety, because everybody kind of across party lines kind of is in agreement that we need to do something about that. And at least in Texas, there is a lot of new money for school safety, like all the time, right? It's something that's growing where other pots of money might be shrinking.
Christine, one threat that I would add to that, though, is
Okay.
what we have here in North Carolina called the Parents' Rights Initiative, which
Okay.
is keeping us out of the schools,
Okay.
not allowing us to go in and make our presentations and help to educate the families. So that if we did especially here in the Outer Banks, if we did that SWOT analysis, that would be something that we'd have to. Yeah, we have that opportunity, but then we also have this pushback.
Okay, that is an amazing example. You're right. That's it. Okay. That's a great example of a threat because it's something that you can't control, right? It is there and it is real and it impacts you. And so you can't control it, but you can consider it so that when you're making your plans, you're aware of what's realistic and you can try to figure out ways to reduce the impact that it will have on your success as an organization. Do y'all have other examples of opportunities or threats that you see that are external that have the potential to impact your work or that are already impacting your work? I think we've got like the big ones, but I'm sure there are more. Let's see. So Holly mentioned social media, and that's an interesting one because it's not one I would have thought of, but it absolutely is an opportunity, right? Because it makes it, especially for an organization like NAMI North Carolina that supports organizations across an entire state, social media makes it easier to get in front of people virtually, right? It makes it easier to get messages out. And so that's definitely an opportunity. Any other thoughts? Yes.
I hope one of the opportunities that the affiliates will be thinking about are the funds that NAMI North Carolina, we currently have them this fiscal year. We anticipate having them again for next fiscal year. We're definitely asking for that direct support to affiliates line item in our DHHS contract. So I hope an opportunity is for affiliates to really be thinking about how they can leverage those grants from NAMI North Carolina to increase programming, to one of the reasons Kathy and I kind of got off topic when we ended up in a breakout room is we were talking about their challenge and NAMI Outer Banks with getting the word out. They're a relatively new affiliate. As Kathy noticed, that's a pretty, for full-time folks living in the Outer Banks, it's a pretty closed community. And, you know, Kathy and Phil are relatively new out there as full-time residents. And so, you know, we talked about marketing, and I was able to share that we've done some paid marketing that we have funds for. We're working with another affiliate on some paid marketing for their community, specifically to get the word out that NAMI's here. Please reach out to us. And so now Kathy's going to set up a meeting with our marketing person to talk about a targeted campaign in her communities. So I hope that that's something as people are thinking about strategic planning is how they can leverage funding from NAMI North Carolina to support the work they're already doing.
Thank you, Holly. You know, that makes me think about something too, that sometimes when government funding is in shorter supply, philanthropic partners step up, right? And it's not possible for philanthropy to fill the gap of what government provides. I mean, like government can do so much more than philanthropy can do. But if your organizations if you do find yourselves in situations where the government funding is really in jeopardy, it's possible that some of the foundations and corporate donors and others in your community will be willing to do more and will be wanting to support those organizations that have lost public funding. And so I think that your note about just kind of engaging with those partners in marketing and thinking about that is especially relevant right now. Okay, well, is there anything else on the SWOT analysis that y'all want to share or questions that you have before we move on to a different tool?
Can I clarify a procedural thing?
Sure.
Did I understand, Holly, to say that you ask everybody at NAMI North Carolina to list what they thought the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats were, and then each individual did that and turned it in to some objective person who sort of organized it and put together duplicates and stuff like that? So that's
Yes.
started.
Yes. So we sent out a survey that was basically a SWOT survey. So, identify, what you see as the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats for NAMI North Carolina. It went out to all of our board members and to all of our staff. And it was free form. You could put as much in any of those categories as you wanted. And those actually, they went to a third party. So, and then they were basically all pulled together into an actual SWOT analysis, a chart, and then some additional detail to that. But what we were given, it didn't identify who said what. So, and part of the reason for doing that was to try and make people feel more comfortable to share what they really thought were especially when you start talking about weaknesses and threats. Sometimes people can feel like, oh, I don't want anybody to think that I said that. So we did find that helpful.
So who was the third party, or what kind of person did you use as that third party?
So we were really fortunate. My daughter works for a nonprofit in Florida. She's the operations manager. And this is what they do. They do consulting for other nonprofit organizations. And so obviously we can't hire her at NAMI North Carolina. So she did it for us as a volunteer. But that's what she regularly does as part of her job is, again, her company is a nonprofit as well. It's the Executive Service Corps of Florida. And so she was just able to use the same basic tools and resources that she uses with her nonprofit clients and then do that for us.
Okay, so like if my affiliate did that with our board members, could we gather the results and give them to Christine maybe, and that could be part of, she could analyze it and draw it together for us, and that would be part of what we paid her for, what NAMI North Carolina paid her for.
And I'm gonna let Christine answer that.
Okay, yes, absolutely. So what we would probably do is, so I'll be available to do a call for about an hour with each of you one-on-one if you would like at some point following today's webinar. And that would be to discuss kind of what is it that your organization needs right now and like potentially make a plan if you want to do that. And then I am also available to support you with doing a SWOT analysis, making a strategic plan, updating a strategic plan if you have one, or creating a dashboard for one if you have one, kind of whatever you need, right? You all might need different things. And so that's why we decided to do these one-on-one calls after today, so that we can talk through kind of your unique situation. But absolutely, I would be available to help with something like that. And actually, so in the past, I have used SurveyMonkey for surveys, surveymonkey.com. But recently, I have found that Google Forms works just as well and is easier to use and is free. Google Forms wasn't always around. But do any of you guys use like Gmail or Google Drive or G Suite for your work?
We do. Yeah, we use Gmail, and I was a teacher for 23 years, so Google Forms were great. And Google Forms will actually break it down for you. Like if you have certain things that they select, it can give you pie charts and graphics that can help you see what the data says. So it just depends on how you build your survey, but it can also break it down for you. So therefore, you don't really need someone to analyze it.
Awesome.
And we use Google Forms for ours.
Okay. Awesome. So yeah, there are so many tools out there that I think we can use or you can use to gather information and analyze it and pull it together quickly, so that you have a good basis for creating your plan. Okay, so next, I want to move to a different tool. It's one of my favorite tools, and so I'm excited to share it with you guys. I think you will like it. In order to use it, I'm first going to need you to each make a list of your organization's main activities. And so you can list your programs, but we know there are other things besides your programs that your organization does. So for example, you might have like bookkeeping or financial management responsibilities, and maybe you or maybe somebody else who does that for your organization. There might be like HR stuff, but what are like the activities or like kind of the buckets of work that your organization has to do or is engaged in? So I'm going to give you a few minutes to write those down. When you're done with that, let me know. I'm going to request that everybody mute when you're not speaking, because there's some background noise. And I want you to turn it off mute to participate, but when you're not participating, if you can keep it muted, it'll be easier for everyone. It looks like some of y'all are still working on your list of activities, but it looks like some of you are finished up. So just give you maybe 30 more seconds. Okay, does everybody have a list? Okay, Awesome. So then this next activity is called eco-cycle planning. And so what you see here is basically an infinity symbol. And the idea is that this is a cycle, or it's a continuum, in that any organization, any program moves along this continuum. In the quadrant on the top left, you'll see that it's labeled with the words gestation and sowing. That's kind of like your ideation, brainstorming, planning phase. That's where you figure out what do you want to be doing, or how do you want to do it. It's where you set your goals. If we move down to this bottom left quadrant in the green, you'll see that it says birth or tending. You can also think of this as like startup or launch. So this is when you start doing that new thing that you came up with during the blue phase in the top left. The green phase, birth, that's when you start doing it. And once you start doing the things, say you launch a new program, it moves up the continuum as it grows. And eventually it reaches what's called the maturity or harvesting phase. And that's where you're really good at doing this thing. It's paying off. You're getting a return on the investment. Things are going smoothly. Then if you keep going along the cycle, you get to this bottom right quadrant where in the yellow, you'll see that it says creative destruction or plowing. This is where you start to look at, do we still need to be doing this thing? Are there adjustments that we need to make? But this is where you kind of throw out the old stuff that's not working anymore, so that you can go back up the continuum through this process that's called renewal, and go back to that gestation, sowing, ideation, brainstorming, research, like planning phase. These four phases, so if you see the blue, the green, the orange, and the yellow, there is none of those are like the right or wrong phase to be in. They are all just like normal parts of life, right? Or you can think of it as like 4 different seasons, maybe, right? We have to go through all of them. We might like some more than others, but none of the seasons are bad, right? They're just reality, like that's life. And so it's the same for the work that we do. It moves along this continuum. At one point or another, we have to go through each phase. In addition, our organization isn't necessarily like 100% in one phase at one time. Like maybe if you're starting a brand new nonprofit from scratch, maybe everything's in the gestation phase or in the birth phase. But for the most part, like for most of our organizations, different things we're doing are in different places. And that's okay. Where we run into problems with this is you'll see these black and white boxes on the left and right sides. We have the poverty trap and the rigidity trap. Those are the places where we don't want to be. Almost every organization has things, activities, programs, whatever, that are stuck in those traps. And so to me, the reason that this activity or this tool is so valuable is because it helps us figure out what's in those traps, and so that then we can figure out what to do about it. So if we go back to the left side of this, so remember the blue is gestation, sowing, brainstorming, research, ideation, planning. That's where we're kind of figuring out what do we want to do. But if we don't invest in it, we never get down to the green phase. We never birth it. We never launch it. We're never in startup, right? We have to invest time, energy, money, staff, like whatever it is that's needed in order to move from blue down to green. And a lot of nonprofits have things that get stuck in this poverty trap because there's not enough money or there's not enough time. And so it's important to figure out, like, do we have things that are stuck here? And if so, what are those things and why are they there? And what are we going to do about it? And so we'll talk about that in a minute. But similarly, if we go to the other side, And let's say we have programs that have been in maturity for a long time and they're amazing and our clients really value what they get and our funders are happy with us and all of that. That's maturity and that's great. But we cannot stay there forever because the communities that we serve change, their needs change, the landscape changes. Other organizations come in and start doing similar or different work. Technology changes. The political climate changes. And if we try to stay here forever, we end up stuck in what's called the rigidity trap. And the rigidity trap, that's where we are doing something that no longer works, that no longer makes sense, that's no longer appropriate for the time, but we are like insisting on holding on to it because it's what we've always done. And we think that it's what we want to keep doing. The only way to get out of this rigidity trap is to allow ourselves, our organizations, our work to go through this creative destruction or this plowing phase. And, the word destruction has a negative connotation. And so this can seem like a place that you don't want to be in. Like, well, we don't want to destruct like these things that we've built, right? But it's actually a really positive thing because it's what allows us to ensure that our work is still like relevant and timely and important and impactful. And it allows us to go through this renewal phase and back up to this gestation phase, which to me are really exciting. So that's kind of big picture, what this diagram means. And I want to spend some time with you kind of identifying where your different activities lie on this map. But before we do that, I just want to ask you, are there any questions about this or what this means, or any like comments or reactions that you want to share?
It would be interesting to get our boards to take a list of our activities and place them in different spots on this and see if we all agree where they are.
Absolutely. So I often use this with organizations and their boards, and I'll print a big version or draw a big version. We'll put it on a wall, and everybody gets to use sticky notes to map out where they see different activities fitting. And it works really well with boards that are like involved and engaged and that really know your organization. It doesn't work as well with boards that don't really know what's going on. In those situations, it works better with staff. But today, we'll use it just kind of to talk through where you think your activities fit. And y'all will probably all have different perspectives because you're with different organizations. But I wanted to share this with you because it's something that I think will be insightful for you alone today, but it also might be something that you want to take to your team or to your board. So are there other thoughts on this off the bat? Okay, then I am going to give you guys a few minutes to think about think independently about where the activities that you wrote down fit. In an ideal world, we'd be in person and we'd map it out, but you have your list. And so I'm going to suggest that you just write the phase or the trap that you think each activity is in kind of on your list. Okay, then next I'm going to send y'all to breakout groups so that you can talk through this with your group and just share with your group where you see the different activities of your organization falling right now. Also, talk with your group about whether you might have anything that is stuck in one of those traps. And Lynn, I think you'll have to put yourself in a group again.
Hello. How are you, Tony?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good. Is Tammy, are you here? Hey, Tammy.
As you may know, we're both with Orange County.
I know. And I don't think she knew that. And I'm with NAMI North Carolina, so I'm not really participating in this piece of it. But I mean, I
Well,
guess
you
if
need
you
to
guys
participate.
are good to like chat about what, I mean, because y'all might have different things about the activities.
Well, let me throw out something. I quickly did what she suggested we do, but this needs a lot more work and a lot more people involved. I mean, you sort of get stuck without the dialogue. Well, one thing that occurred to me is I could easily pin a couple of things, and I want to see if Tammy agrees. Um, I think our programs, which Tammy's critically involved in, are sort of mature. They're trucking along. We're doing what we should be doing. I think maybe 6 months ago, a year ago, we might have said we need to do better, we need to do more. But I would think fundraising's rigidity. We're doing the same things we've always done, but we're getting the same results we've always gotten, and we need to rethink what we're doing there. I think volunteers is sort of in a birth or growth mode. I think we're doing really well there. We've got a number of new people. We're identifying new board members. We put some emphasis in that, so that's good. Tammy might have a better perspective on programs, for example, than I do. So I'll stop talking.
Okay, as far as programs, we are doing great. As far as peer-to-peer, we need more participation in the family support groups, and we also need more participation for Orange County with the connections group for Durham and Orange County. We have one new person, a new facilitator, and in the class I'm teaching now, we have 2 more people that would like to become facilitators.
That's great.
And the class, I'm going to do another class in April, and I'm sure somebody would like to be in that. Someone out of that class would probably like to be a facilitator. So as far as peer-to-peer, we're doing good, and we need more support with the family support groups. And as far as our CIT, I think it's going okay. I'm going to be trained on March 22nd for the In Our Own Voices. And
Awesome.
I'd like to do another program called Sharing Hope. So I'm going to find out more about that. I went to one meeting, but now I have to register. And so that would bring us more volunteers and participation because they have town halls, and then they can have we can have a table there and get to tell people more about Orange County. And and Tony could tell you more about the crisis facility that will be built soon. And I think that's about all I want to say as far as the
Okay.
program
So I think
is going.
Yeah, I think largely because of Tammy's efforts and others, I think our program, I don't know where to put it in the chart, but we're doing the same thing. That is, we're doing the programs we've always identified. We're beginning to identify more facilitators and more trainers, and then we're trying to offer more sessions. The framework's still the same, but we're doing better.
Yeah.
And then Tammy's trying to push the boundaries in terms of other things we can offer as well. So I think, I don't know where you put that, but that's been a positive. Fundraising, I think fits in that rigidity mode. We're doing the same thing we've always done, getting the same result, and we're not happy with the result, right? It's not bad.
I don't think you're alone in that one. I'm sure there's other affiliates that feel the same way about that.
And some of us I've been working with the county government and local governments on the crisis diversion facility and other sort of criminal justice reform, crisis response reform efforts. We've made a lot of progress. That's been largely outside of NAMI, but we just recently held a public education event to broadcast what we've been doing with the county and what the county and Chapel Hill are doing. So we're trying to do more of that in terms of what I call that outreach or engagement with the community. So
yeah, that's great. I heard about that in Chapel Hill in Orange County with the crisis response, and that's great. I didn't know your involvement with that, so it's much needed.
I've been leading up the subcommittee that made that happen for the last 5 years.
Wow. Okay.
So
that's awesome.
It's been my life since I retired.
Yeah. Well, I will say, from what I know about NAMI Orange, you guys are doing great. I think you're programmatically, y'all are doing fantastic. We have several affiliates in the state that are really struggling to even just run one program. So, and just like y'all touched on, is the volunteers, like what predominantly are your newer volunteers doing now? Are they running programs, or what are they coming in doing?
I think we don't know yet. I think we've got Tammy's working on getting, I'll put them in two categories. Tammy's working on getting more trainers and facilitators through her classes. And so that's growing. That allows us to do more classes. In terms of the volunteers, we've identified volunteers and we need to engage them. That's the next step. We need to engage them meaningfully. They've stepped forward. We've got a number of them. Some are interested in being on the board eventually. So now we need to use those resources effectively. I don't know if we're there yet.
Yeah. Yeah, I get a lot of the volunteer interest surveys to my inbox, and then I pass them, to whatever affiliate in the area that they're in, and I get quite a few that I pass on to Maryland from Orange County. I'm hoping that's some of the ones that are coming your way too, that just express, an interest in a variety of things.
And we're trying to expand our operations in Chatham County because we cover 2 counties.
Yes,
and that's been a lagger, and we need to pick that up.
That's something,
time because nobody came back before they had to. So I wish I had given you more, but once I hit the button, it was too late. Okay, so how did that go? How was that discussion? Good. Okay. Does anybody want to share? Well, actually, let me back up. Let's start with the gestation phase. What are some of the things that y'all mapped out for the gestation phase for your organizations, or that you heard from others are in gestation?
I had a hard time. This would be an interesting chart to discuss with others because I had a hard time just on my own, putting things in different places. But I think what we're doing with programs and expanding facilitators and adding sessions, and then what we're doing with volunteers fall in the gestation birth area. I mean, I think things are going in a growth mode there. So those are two
Okay.
examples.
Are there things that you're like planning that you haven't implemented yet, or are they like new things that you're doing?
Others can weigh in. I think they're on a spectrum. That's why I said I would
Okay.
have to have a discussion about where these all sort of fit, but they're
Okay.
over there, fortunately.
Okay. Got it. Sometimes it's challenging to figure out where things fit, and sometimes different people in the same organization put them in different places.
Yeah, I put most of ours in the gestation and a little bit of poverty trap as being the new affiliate on the block, and a lot of the trying just to make those connections. We have programs, we're trying to get them going, but we're really not there yet. So I can't really say we're tending them because we have the training done, but we don't have the recipients for the training yet. So I feel like we're kind of in a poverty trap. So Holly and I talked about some ways to possibly move us forward from there. So
Awesome. Can you give us an example of something that's in the poverty trap and why you think it's there?
our support groups mostly because I mean, we've been trained. So we have this family support group and connection support group trained, ready to go. We've advertised them, they're on our calendar, but we don't have anybody attending them. So they're kind of stuck because we're not getting the word out. That communication to other people seems to be falling short.
Okay. Awesome. So they're not getting the word out. It could be that it hasn't been given the time or the energy, or that you haven't had the funds or the staff resources. So it sounds like it could be poverty trap. Thank you.
Yeah.
And sometimes, I mean, do you just have a couple things in that poverty trap, or are you seeing like a lot in that trap?
Well, like I said, I feel like most of our programs are stuck there right now. I mean, we have a resource database that we've worked on very well, and that actually is, I think, more in the birth part. It's actually out there. It's on our website now. We're getting feedback from it. We're tending to it, adding to it, updating things for people as feedback comes to us. So that I think is in the birth area. But
Okay.
like I said, most of our programs, I think, is what's stuck in the poverty.
Okay, that makes sense. And I was asking about how much is in there because, like, if there are a few things in there, then it might be a matter of identifying that they're in there and figuring out what they need and making a plan for how to get them what they need, right? To get them to that birth phase. But sometimes there are organizations where there's just so much in that poverty trap, it is not realistic to get all of it out. And so that's when it's like, well, maybe we need to move backwards and go back to that ideation phase and kind of set some priorities or like scale some of these plans back, because there's only so much time that we have, right? It doesn't sound like your organization is in that position. Okay, so what about birth phase? Who else has activities in the birth phase?
I would say all of ours.
Okay, is your organization new?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay.
We haven't been official yet, but we're trying to get all the pieces together and get it rolling. So
Okay.
everything's in gestation.
Oh, everything's in gestation. Okay, awesome.
I would say so. Yes.
And so for you, then the important thing is making sure that you don't fall into that poverty trap, right? But how do you move it from gestation to birth?
Mhm.
Do y'all have a strategic plan?
No, not currently.
Okay. Okay. So then that might be a really helpful tool for you for figuring out kind of how do you move things out of gestation to birth? Like, what are the priorities that you're going to invest in? What kind of like, what does that mean, right? Like, what do you need in order to move those things through?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And Christine, just so you know, so Philip's affiliate they're still in the formation phase of the affiliate, but they're already starting to get some of their volunteers trained, and they're doing community outreach and things like that. So
Okay.
yeah, so they're having to do both the administrative side of the getting your affiliate started, but they're not waiting. They're already under our umbrella, doing things within the community.
Okay, that's great. So they've got some stuff in that birth phase as well, it sounds like, but there's still a lot in gestation. Okay. So what about others? What did you come up with for like the left half of this cycle? So gestation, birth, and then like the poverty trap where things can get stuck in between.
We are birthing a partnership with the Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority. I
Okay.
think we gestated it over the last few months, and we're getting ready to do a program for and with them. And it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that because somebody pointed out to me recently that relationships can be mapped out on this as well, not just activities, right? But sometimes, relationships are so important to the work we do, whether those are with individuals or like partnerships with other organizations. And those also kind of go through different phases at times. It can be insightful to figure out where they are. Does anybody else want to add something about like the left half of this, about gestation, birth, or poverty trap?
One of the things we talked about in our group was fundraising, kind of getting caught in that rigidity trap, doing some of the same, activities and fundraisers every year and not, really being able to come up with new fundraisers or branching out in new ways to, do that for your affiliate.
Yep.
It becomes easy to, do some of the same things that you've always done because they work, which is great. But being able to, come up with new ways, new things that can even engage new volunteers through those efforts, that definitely becomes part of the rigidity trap.
Yeah, and that's an interesting one because we think of fundraising as how we get out of that poverty trap, and it can be, but fundraising is also like a program or an activity, and it can itself be in the rigidity trap. And if it's in the rigidity trap, there's like a really concrete impact on your organization, right? It's not just like, oh, we're not doing this program as well as we could anymore, but it's like you're not bringing the money in necessarily, right? If you're stuck. So that's a good segue. So to kind of the other phases on the right side of this. So we've got the maturity phase, the creative destruction phase, and then the rigidity trap in between them. What did y'all identify in those areas?
We're in the process of reevaluating our, I don't know what you call it. When people invite us to have a table at an event and share NAMI information, I just call that tabling. We have tabled inside and outside both, and now we're all so old we can't handle putting a canopy up. So we're reevaluating whether we want to limit ourselves to indoor tabling events or not, or how we're going to handle, the fact that canopies are hard to put up. So
Okay.
creative destruction with that.
Yeah, and that one's interesting because it's like you had to, like, you no longer can do what you were doing. So you didn't get stuck in the rigidity trap because you had to move past it, right? To creative destruction, which is interesting because of like an external factor.
Yes. We had requested money from the grant to buy a canopy, and then we realized none of us would be able to use it.
Okay.
So that's something we're reevaluating.
Makes sense. Is there anything else that y'all identified for maturity, creative destruction, or the rigidity trap? Okay, something I'll add about this. Another way that I've found this tool to be helpful is for sharing with staff or board members when you're in that creative destruction phase, because without kind of the larger context, sometimes that creative destruction phase can seem really scary, or it can make people feel like the organization's falling apart, like somebody dropped the ball, like things aren't going the way they should go. And this can be a really helpful tool to show people that like creative destruction can be a really good thing and like a necessary thing, and that it doesn't necessarily mean that like there's a problem in the organization. It actually can mean that the organization is progressing and moving forward and keeping things from being stuck or getting things unstuck. So there at the bottom of this image on your slide, you'll see that there's a web address, www.liberatingstructures.com. That's where you can find information on this activity as well as many others, and I highly recommend it. There, basically, it's a website with like free guidance on a bunch of like facilitation and analysis tools that you can use. And a lot of it is like, they call them microstructures, but I think of them as facilitation tools. And a lot of it is basically just ways to get people engaged and participating in analysis, planning, brainstorming, discussion, and a way to make meetings more fun. So I encourage you to check out that website. And then my last slide here. So we've talked about this already, but a potential next step for you guys, if you're interested, is to do a one-on-one call with me, or if there's somebody else at your organization you want to include, that would be fine too. But it would be a call that's specific to your organization, and there's no like immediate like deadline for those. So if you need a few weeks or even a couple months to figure out what you need, I think that's probably okay. But the idea with the call is that you don't have to do a lot of preparation for it, but it would be time to talk through your situation, and maybe there are questions you have about strategic planning or troubleshooting that you want to do on strategic planning. I could help you with it during that call. Or alternatively, if you think your organization needs something bigger, we can talk about what that might look like if I were to help you with that, or if you were to do it on your own. So I encourage you to take advantage of this opportunity. You can reach out to me at my email address is on here. And I would love to talk with you. So I hope to hear from you. I think that's all I've got. And so I will pass it off to Lynn to close.
Thank you so much, Christine. This has been fantastic. I hope that all of you have gotten some great information and have learned some things today that can help your affiliate. And I truly hope you take up Christine and us on the offer to schedule those one-on-one consultations. I think it could be very helpful. It's exciting to see, you know, not only some of our affiliates who have been around for quite some time, and also some that are just getting started on this call today. So that's, you know, something that makes us happy at NAMI. You know, we're here to support you in any way we can. So congratulations on all the things you've been doing and the ways that you're helping your community. It's just inspiring. So if anybody has any questions to round things out, we've got a couple more minutes. So
does NAMI North Carolina have its strategic plan on the website so we can see what one looks like?
We do have our current strategic plan. It technically expired in 2024. So we'll be posting the new one. If you're interested, I think I can share with you what our strategic, like the different documents that came out of our strategic plan, you know, that we're going to be working on at our upcoming board retreat. And then that might give you some ideas, Louise, if you'd like me to share those with you.
That would help if I could see an example of, and also we need to know it so that we can be in line with what NAMI North Carolina's doing. And I'm guessing NAMI National has theirs somewhere on the website.
So when I was at the Executive Director Leadership Exchange, yes, I'm trying to think what I was at. They showed us the strategic plan. It wasn't up on the website the last time I looked, which was a few weeks ago. They were like finalizing it, but let me see if the updated one is up there, and I can share that as well.
That would be great. Yeah.
Holly, if you, maybe, and Lynn, if we could share that through the ALF, I think that would be helpful for all the presidents to have. And maybe just in our next meeting, just do an update on that. That would be great.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
That's a great idea, Marilyn. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions or comments? Please make sure you take down Christine's information right here on this slide. If for some reason you take it down and lose it, contact me. I can get that for you. And of course, if you have any other questions about today or anything else, don't hesitate to reach out to me or Holly. And yeah, I hope you guys have a great afternoon. Thanks so much for attending. And thank you, Christine, for such a great webinar. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.